All right, let's talk about some more news. Over the last several weeks, Republican governors and secretaries of state have been doing everything they can to make it harder for people to vote. People of color, people who are poor, and people who don't vote that often. Here's just a few of the most egregious examples. In North Dakota, Native American tribes are facing a new law that requires voters to provide their current street address, which is a problem for a lot of Native Americans who live on reservations or in rural areas that use P.O. boxes instead of street addresses. Here in Texas, where you have one of the strictest voter ID laws in the country, Attorney General Ken Paxton has prosecuted more voter fraud cases this year than the last 5 combined. And perhaps the worst example in the country right now, Georgia's Secretary of State Brian Kemp has canceled over 1.4 million voter registrations since 2012, including 53,000 over the last few weeks, and more than 70% of those canceled are from African-American voters. Kemp is also canceling these registrations in an election where he is the candidate for governor.
There it is.
You know what, John? Smart strategy.
Brittany, how are Republicans getting away with this, and why has it gotten so particularly bad in this election, even though it's existed for a while?
I mean, they're getting away with this because they've done it before.
Yeah.
So, history lesson. 3 things in particular happened after the Civil War was won. First is that the 13th Amendment ended slavery. The 15th Amendment, in theory, gave all the dudes, no matter their color, the right to vote.
Yeah.
And Reconstruction started. Funny thing happened. Most of the people, the majority of the people across the South were black people because slavery. And those black people who got the right to vote got with the woke white people across the South, and they suddenly elected a bunch of black people to office. 6 of those folks made it all the way to Congress, and the white supremacists pretty predictably were like, code black, it's time to start suppressing some votes. So they got together and they started a little thing called Jim Crow. That's where we get poll taxes from. That's where grandfather clauses came in. That's where literacy tests came in to make sure that they could take back their country or, I don't know, make America great again. So if this sounds familiar, it's because those same people are the folks who got scared when we got a black man all the way to the White House. Yeah. These same people are running scared, and they're doing things like passing more voter ID laws, like you said. They are doing things in North Carolina that the Supreme Court actually said discriminated against African Americans with surgical precision. That is a direct quote. So the bad news is they've tried to do this before because white supremacy is scared to death of what is happening right now. The good news, though, is that we can take a play out of people like John Lewis's playbook and actually fight this thing back.
Right. In addition to the history of this, there was also a Supreme Court case recently that made this even easier for Republicans to do, right?
So the Voting Rights Act had a provision that said states with a history of suppressing the votes of black Americans had to go through a special process to get their changes in the voting laws approved. They had to go to the Justice Department and make sure that they weren't systematically suppressing the votes of African Americans. Well, the voting rights worked. You can make an argument that America wasn't a liberal democracy until we passed the Voting Rights Act. And so John Roberts, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, took the fact that the voting rights had been so effective to say that we no longer needed the Voting Rights Act. And the second they allowed states like North Carolina and others to pass restrictive voter ID and other restrictions on voting without the approval of the Justice Department, they went fucking hog wild.
Hog wild.
And that has been why people like Brian Kemp and others have the ability to do this.
Tommy, what can people do in the short term between now and the election to make sure that their right to vote is protected?
I mean, in the short term, you can just be as educated as you possibly can. Make sure everyone you know knows that they can use a provisional ballot, even if they're rejected. That you can support lawyers who help people on election day to make sure that they're able to vote. But I also think, like, longer term, I want to see Democrats go on offense on this issue. We're constantly defending and saying, you know, we're constantly pushing back and saying, oh, voter fraud is not a problem. Like, we should be making same-day voter registration nationwide. There's all these ways we need to fight and be proactive here, and then we're just not doing it.
And people who have paid their debt to society should be able to... Right here in Texas, a woman named Crystal Mason is facing, or actually she has started her 5-year jail sentence for voting even though she served 3 years and didn't know that it was against the law for her to vote. She got arrested and she will be in jail for 5 years. So if you do nothing else, get you and 10 friends to go vote for Crystal Mason.
Yeah.
I'd make 2 points about this. The first is Democrats, it's wrong to say Democrats haven't fought this, because we have. We have places where we have power, we've defeated these laws. It has been the Democratic Party that has sued to overturn the most onerous laws. But Tommy is right, we've never made a public argument about it. We've never made it so that there was a political cost for politicians who pushed these laws. And we have to change that. We've been overly hesitant. I remember these conversations in the 2012 Obama campaign when a lot of these laws went into place, was there's a theory that if you tell people how hard it's going to be to vote, people who are less likely to vote won't go. If you're saying you have your ID, there'll be long lines, all of that. I think we have to move away from that and have a more aggressive argument. I also think we have to put this in the context of a larger Republican strategy. There are 2 facts about American politics Republicans have known for a long time. There are more potential Democratic voters than Republican voters in this country, and before too long, there are going to be a lot more Democratic voters than Republican voters. So they have a strategy through redistricting, through voter suppression, through campaign finance law to give power to billionaires, and through packing the courts to ensure that even though there will be more Democrats, Republicans will be able to hold on to power even though they're a distinct minority.
Yeah.
The impact is huge.
Yeah. The impact is huge. And in addition to fighting for same-day registration, automatic registration, which a lot of states have done, and look, the states that have done automatic registration, there's like 15 states over the last couple of years, and they've added millions and millions of voters to the rolls, and it actually ups voter participation. The other thing we can do is, we always talk about this, how Democrats have not focused enough on down-ballot races. Whatever the Supreme Court decides and courts decide, we can elect secretaries of state who are Democrats, who will then be in charge of making sure that voter rolls aren't purged and that these kind of suppression tactics never happen in these states. So I think that's important.
This is it's very specific what having Democrats in power would mean. So in Ohio, in 2008, we had a Democratic governor. Barack Obama won Ohio by a lot. John Kasich got elected in 2010. Ohio, in response to 10-hour-long lines at the 2004 election, had a lot of days of early voting. And then the Republicans got in power, and they looked at all the early voting, saw Obama won, and then they looked and saw that the final Sunday of early voting was the day of highest turnout in African-American precincts. So when we came time for Barack Obama to run in 2012, they canceled that day.
Funny how that happens.
If you look at, people give Hillary a lot of shit for not going to Wisconsin, rightly so. But if you look at the voter ID laws in Wisconsin that were put in place, 17,000 people didn't get the chance to vote, and Trump won the state by 23,000. So that is huge.
And one other just sort of thing, too, is this is not something that happened in the last year or 2 years. There was a concerted, well-funded effort by the Koch brothers, Alec, others, to enshrine voter ID laws and other restrictive laws on the books across the country. We need to have a long-term vision for what we think voting should be, and we need to put resources behind it. One thing that feels incredibly outlandish, and it is a constitutional amendment to protect the right to vote that says everyone has a right to vote, and Congress can enforce it with the law so that the Supreme Court can't turn it over, so Congress can't turn it over. We need to start thinking long-term about a positive vision for what it means for everyone to have the chance to vote.
At the end of the day, this is something rooted in fear, right? They are absolutely scared of the dismantling of the status quo and the loss of their power. And as far as I'm concerned, they should be scared. We should be the greatest collective threat oppression has ever seen. I want us to be supremacy's worst nightmare come true. I want them to go running when they see us on November 6th, on November 7th, on every single day thereafter, because we actually have to create the country that works for all of us.
What about Christmas?
No off days from justice.
And I will end by saying that is the long-term strategy, and in the short term between now and the election, as Tommy was saying, as Dan was saying, stay in line if you're in line. If they try to turn you away, you can demand a provisional ballot, and they have to give you one. The New York Times just ran a story today. There were people waiting in line in Georgia for hours and hours to vote. There was one man who passed out from heat exhaustion, and they tried to take him to the hospital, and he said he wouldn't go because he was going to stay there and vote.
But you wanted to take off Christmas.
You wanted to take off Christmas. So remember that. Okay, that's all the time we have for news today. Tommy, why don't you tell us where you and Lovett were this week?
Sure. So we're in Austin for a reason.
Barbecue.
Lots of barbecue.
You guys may have noticed that there is an incredibly exciting Senate race going on. So Lovett and I went over to a Beto O'Rourke field office here in Austin to check it out and see how things are going. Here's the clip.
Lovett, here we are in Texas.
And the question is, can Texas turn blue?
People are fired up about Beto O'Rourke. Can they translate that enthusiasm into votes? These people, the campaign team, are the key. So let's go find out and talk to them. So you're the field director.
Yes, I'm the field director.
What the hell does that mean?
So I'm responsible for all of the campaign's programs that organize volunteers to knock on doors, make phone calls. We want to make sure you have the information you need.
So you've got a lot of volunteers who are here kind of helping out. Do you want to show us sort of your operation?
Yeah, sure. Let me show
Show
you
us
around.
the nerve center.
So this is the room that I work in. Got some of the senior field staff here.
Hey guys, do you think if Beto raises 39 million, you get some warm fucking lighting in here?
Do you have a bigger beanbag?
This was the biggest one that we could buy.
It costs $40,000.
Back here is our phone banking room. This is where we have volunteers run phone banks.
This is what a field campaign looks like. Lots of people making phone calls.
Well, listen, we really appreciate that support.
I want a hard sell.
Value it. So listen, we're in the final stretch of the campaign.
Yeah, we are.
And we're inviting more people to get involved.
This looks cool.
Look at me. You're the captain now.
Don't mind me.
I'm just gonna.
I love Belinda.
Sir, I was just calling to remind you that Election Day is on November 6th.
I know. I mean, it's like I'm not even here.
Smile and dial all day.
Smile and dial.
Why did you get involved in politics?
I am a DACA recipient. I grew up on the border. After 2016, I realized that there was an urgency for us, for documented individuals to use our voice.
The way immigrants are talked about is like MS-13. It's trying to scare people away from immigration. How does that make you feel as a DACA recipient?
There's a difference between criminality and, being an immigrant. We, come to this country for a better future.
People, there's a real chance that DACA recipients would lose their status. But was there a moment where you really thought that you might have to leave?
Last year, that was a scary thing. I was afraid. There's only so much you can do by being afraid and by being scared, right? So I, had trust in Congress that something was going to happen. And that was a mistake. But I used that as fuel for me to continue getting involved, being an activist, being an organizer in my community.
What do you say to young people who have the right to vote but choose not to do it?
I wish I had that right to vote, to cast a ballot this November, but I can't.
This is my first time ever volunteering for a campaign. My son was murdered November 16th, 2016, just days after the election. And so I started getting involved in politics right 2 months after my son's death because I refused to sit at home. And I wanted to find out what it is that I can do.
Do you ever get frustrated that you're trying to advocate for sort of common sense gun legislation in a place that people may not be receptive?
Why would anyone have a problem with background checks? What is it in your background that you're afraid to come out?
You've been through this unimaginable personal loss. You lost your son, and you're here and you're working. So how do you stay hopeful?
So what keeps me going is the fact that I can at least try to bring about change, and I'm doing it for my son, and I'm doing it for the nearly 100, lives a day that are lost by gun violence. I do it for them.